The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 173.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Braveheart team.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Position healers. Wearing a bit thin. Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. Today we're discussing the Remembrance of the Daleks, a Seventh Doctor story. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. So this is, as I said, a Seventh Doctor story. It aired in October of 1988. Those numbers look a little small on the screen.
This isn't just a Seventh Doctor story. This is the first serial of the 20th anniversary year. So this really is their 25th anniversary serial.
That's right.
That's why there's so many callbacks to earlier things that kind of get snuck in throughout.
That's true. And now I'll rely on you to point them out to me as we get to them. Yeah.
Yep.
Also, as the 25th anniversary special, it is way better than both the 10th anniversary and the 20th anniversary stories. The 10th anniversary story was the three doctors, and it was okay, but it was not great. And then the 20th anniversary was the five doctors, which was lame. And by comparison, this one works much better as a story. It's faster paced and it's more entertaining.
This is one I enjoyed as a kid. I remember watching it when it first came out in the United States about a year after. We were kind of a year behind. And I've always enjoyed it as a story. It's always been one of my favorites.
I really like this. This was a good story. It's my first time seeing it. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. This was really well done. It's interesting that the Seventh Doctor has started a bit of a shift. I notice he's becoming less madcap and a little more
sinister and calculating. Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get into that as we go. Couple things to mention is that this is the last appearance of the Daleks and Davros, spoilers, until the revival in 2005. So this is the last time we'll see them in the classic Who. And let's see, this was the first time. Well, we'll get to that in a second. I don't want to spoil what we're going to talk about in a bit. So, but as we go, it starts with a view from space, and we hear quotes or recordings,
audio recordings
of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and other voices as we're looking at Earth from space, and then a spaceship approaching Earth. So voices from the early 60s. Interesting that two of the most prominent are Americans.
They asked the Queen, they asked Buckingham Palace if they could use a clip of the Queen, and they were not amused.
We are not amused.
I think one of them was Khrushchev. I think you heard him speaking as well.
Oh,
because it was Russian. So
was that him saying, "We will bury you"?
Yeah, exactly.
So one other thing that came up, actually, by the way, before we started, is that there are clues dropped in here that to watch out for about the Doctor's secret past on Gallifrey, related to the Omega, end of Omega, related to the so-called Cartmel master plan, and the end of the most recent season of.
It was interesting to watch this after the whole issue with the timeless child and the final episode of the final couple episodes of the previous season.
It seems that this Doctor had more memories of his past than other Doctors have had.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. Well, so it all starts where, after we see the view from space, it starts in Shoreditch in the UK, in London, Coal Hill School, where it all began.
Yep.
That's the school where Ian was headmaster,
And
right?
Ian-
was he headmaster or
well,
teacher?
No, their teacher.
Ian and Barbara were both teachers. Ian taught science. Barbara taught history.
Okay. Well, I
And
wonder
that's
if that
also
was-
where later Clara will teach as well.
Right.
And where Peter Capaldi will become the caretaker.
Oh, that's that reference. Okay, yes, because at one point, the headmaster thinks that the doctor has come to apply for the job as caretaker.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
That's one.
okay.
Of course, that's New Who going back to later Who. Of course, in New
Right.
Who under Capaldi's time, the headmaster of Coal Hill School is Ian Chesterton,
Yes.
That's why I was thinking
which
it.
was
Okay.
still a missed opportunity to have him come on. He's
Yes.
still alive. He was in the Adventures Space and Time.
and he still
That's
does
right.
Big Finish audios.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Um,
And shockingly, for 1963, when this story is set, as we see the children filing into school, one of the boys is wearing dungarees. It's like, what's
That
with
is-
the blue jeans, dude? That's not school dress code in 1963.
Oh no, suit and tie.
Yes. So we have Ace and the Doctor. Ace is carrying a boombox playing 80s rock in an anachronistic 1963. This is 29 November 1963 is the date here,
Mhm.
which is after the Unearthly Child, right? When
They
did
Yes.
basically established it as a month. It's a month after they left Earth.
oh,
And I didn't see an on-screen date for this. I checked TARDIS Wiki, and they were putting it in September of 63, which doesn't make any sense because Doctor Who originally appeared in November of 1963. They make it sound like it's been a month since then, so I would put this in
Yeah.
December of 63, even though it's really, really green for December.
yes. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I'm looking at the TARDIS Wiki, and maybe someone's changed it since because it says November.
Yeah.
Uh,
My assumption
but-
a month after is that scene where they're at the graveyard with the blind vicar, and he says the grave's been ready for a month, and Doctor said I had to leave
Oh.
suddenly. So the idea is kind of implying that when he left Earth in way back in 1963, it was about a month before this episode, give or take.
okay.
Yeah.
So they're walking over toward Coal Hill School. There's a van, a blacked out van. That's not suspicious, with some giant aerial on type. Ace guesses that it's a TV detector van, which is a uniquely British thing.
British thing.
Jimmy, do you know what a TV detector van is?
So in Britain, you have to have a license in order to receive television signals because it's like a government run thing. And so the BBC claims to have they don't own them themselves, but to work with contractors, I gather, who have vans that can drive around and detect the number of televisions in the houses along the street. And if they detect a television receiving whatever and it doesn't have a license, they'll knock on your door and I guess demand you pay the license fee so people aren't pirating television. However, there is a dispute apparently about whether these vans actually do what they claim, or are they just driving around for show to intimidate people into paying the license fee.
I'm not sure how you detect something that's receiving a signal, not transmitting.
Well, when they still had everything was over the air, an antenna would have sympathetic transmission where it would vibrate and it would transmit just a small signal. I mean that's your radios today do the same thing, and so that's what they're supposedly they're picking up off of. Now, how you do that with course, with cable, it's not an issue because you assume the license fee is part of your cable bill.
Yeah.
Same with satellite. So I don't know. Maybe there's still an issue today with the over-the-air digital signals. I don't know.
Yeah. And in a crowded neighborhood, who knows? Anyway, that's
and with all the other electronics that people surround themselves with now.
Exactly.
Right. So there's a schoolgirl standing in the doorway, the gateway into the school grounds, who seems very interested in the Doctor and Ace. Creepy school children is a staple of Doctor Who, classic and new. So the Doctor wants to investigate this van, but Ace is hungry, so he sends her off to go to a nearby shop to get some food. And Doctor gives her some money, a bag full of money to pay, and she has to end up paying with she gets kind of confused by the coins because it's all pre-decimal coins, shillings and pence and stuff. That it's
Britain went over to the decimal system in the late 70s.
Right.
And so this was still, she grew up after that point where it's like ours. You got pennies and pounds, instead of pennies and dollars like we have here in the States. Then it was, pennies, shillings, and pounds. And shillings were so many, or 12
16 pennies
to
to the pence. And yeah. Something like that.
And there's even that's even a callback to An Unearthly Child, the very first episode, because there's one of the anachronisms that Susan has at a certain point is, oh, you haven't gone over to decimalization yet.
Oh, right. Interesting. Meanwhile, the doctor jumps into the van, and meets Professor Rachel Jones, who's also talking to a group captain. So there's some sort of military connection over the radio, and the doctor mumbles some mumbo jumbo, some technobabble about a magnetic fluctuation that she's detecting. He kind of, in his usual blustery way, kind of blusters his way into her confidence, into, I'm an expert and you should trust me sort of thing, which is a lot of fun, the doctor always doing.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the young man that Ace is talking to in the shop turns out to be a military sergeant in civilian gear, who is the woman's aide. And they're called to this scrapyard at Totter's Lane, 76 Totter's Lane, which is where it all began.
I am
Foreman's junkyard.
Totter's Lane.
Foreman's junkyard.
And
right.
I love that scene. That's the scene I always loved where, he's doctor's talking to group captain and goes, well, how do you know, talking about what's there, he goes, I've been here before. He just kind of smiles.
Yes. He's familiar with the place. Yes. He lived there in the junkyard.
And the group captain is maybe familiar if you're a fan of Upstairs, Downstairs, because he's played by Simon, whatever his name is, who was the elder son in the family, James Bellamy. And here he's playing a character, Group Captain Gilmore, but he played a similar role in Upstairs, Downstairs for part of it because they had World War I during that series. And so he was also a military officer there, and I just couldn't help thinking of James Bellamy watching him in this role, although it's about 50 years later.
Yeah. Well, I love the doctor where he first sees him. Listen here, Brigadier, Group Captain.
Yeah.
Not quite Brigadier yet.
And this group is very unit-like, yes.
Yes, it's sort of pre-unit, but yeah.
Professor Jones is even their chief scientific advisor, so she's like a proto-doctor human.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, you get the sense that after this incident, the unit probably grows out of this group of military or something in that sense. But in any case, at Totter's Lane, a soldier has been killed by an energy weapon. The doctor shows his usual disdain for military thinking, and they've cornered whoever shot the soldier in the back of the in the shed.
And by the way, the way he's been killed was by his internal organs have been rearranged. So
sounds unpleasant.
Yeah.
So the Dalek ends up killing another soldier, and so it's a Dalek in there. No surprises. It's called Remembrance of the Daleks.
Well, and the doctor makes it clear too. He knows exactly what it is as soon as it's shot because they launched missile in there or something
Rifle
like that.
Grenades.
Nothing can survive. The little green blob in bonded polycarbide armor.
Right.
Yeah. Also, when the Dalek shoots the new person in front of them, we get the very first appearance of the CGI skeleton effect, where when a Dalek shoots you, you can see your skeleton for a second.
Yeah, there used to be just the reverse image.
Right. It's so interesting that this is the last time we see the Daleks, the first time we see it. So that is something they decided to carry forward into 2005's Doctor Who. Interesting.
Well, I'm trying to think even before this, had they ever shown through the eye stalk? So I think this might be the first time they also showed the eye stalk view.
I believe we've seen through the eye stalk before.
Oh, okay. So the Doctor manages to use the Nitro 9 to blast the Dalek that Ace claimed that she didn't have on her.
Right. I love the dialogue because early on he asks, "You're not carrying any Nitro 9, are you?" And she says, "No," kind of uncertainly. And then here he says, "Ace, give me some of that Nitro 9 you're not carrying." And he uses it. And there's some great dialogue here. When the Doctor wants to leave the junkyard, he turns to Ace and says, "Can you drive?" And Ace says, "Why?" And he says, "Good, I thought so. Get in there." And they hop in a car and drive off. And then the doctor is complaining about the way she's driving, and Ace says, "If you don't like it, you drive." And at that moment, we get an exterior shot where they pass under a bridge, and as they come out the other side of the bridge, they've switched places, and now the doctor is driving. So it's a nice visual.
I love that scene because there was a little glitch. At least the VCR copy that I had of this one. When I watched it online, it was dark until you see them come out and they jump. On the VCR one, you could see them sitting there, and then they would jump as they came out of the bridge.
Oh, funny!
But it was just light enough probably on the original broadcast as well, and they've just darkened it for the streaming version.
That's funny. Yeah, I did enjoy that little. How did he do that?
Yeah.
So the doctor explains to Ace the origin of the Daleks, says they conquered the Earth in the 22nd century, by the way, so that's not what they're there for now. Right, okay, that's coming up in our discussion, but yep. And that what they're really after is the hand of Omega, or Omega, as we Americans would say.
Who we've seen in the Three Doctors special, the 10th anniversary special.
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I haven't seen that yet, so that's good.
Yeah, I don't think we've talked about that one yet. But
yep.
He was like the stellar architect for Gallifrey.
Yes.
He's the one who created the Eye of Harmony that they use as their power source.
Right. And that it becomes a key element in the plot of this episode.
Yep.
So the doctor is back at Coal Hill School. They meet they meet the headmaster, who at first refuses them entrance, and then he thinks that he's there to apply for the job as caretaker. Then they said, no, I just want to look around. And he says, no, you can't do that. And then so he gets a weird sound. He looks off into the distance for a second and then changes his mind. So obviously
his comm dot activates.
Yes. Now, then we have some civilian named Ratcliffe who shows up at the foreman scrapyard. He and his men take control of the broken Dalek from the military. And have killed the soldiers guarding it. They've taken it away, which is so dun dun dun.
Well, first he's introduced by the sergeant to the group captain at the army headquarters.
Right. I'm sorry, you missed that.
I've got men that can help, and then that's where they do that.
Yes. Yeah. So we know humans are in collusion with the Daleks because we've seen the school principal or headmaster.
Yep.
He's under Dalek control. We've also seen Sergeant Mike Sergeant Mike Smith is in league with this group that will come to be called the Association that has killed other military men and taken the broken Dalek. And as far as we know at this point, it's just one group of humans helping the Daleks. But as will be revealed, it's really two groups of humans helping different groups of Daleks that are having a civil war with each other.
Right. Very interesting, by the way. It's I like that they've made this a much more complex story. It's not just simply Daleks versus the Doctor.
Yes, exactly. Having a Dalek civil war makes it much more interesting. Also, just another thing I wanted to note that I liked. So Dr. Rachel Jones obviously is a woman, and there's another woman who is kind of an assistant to her. And I like how, even though this is the 60s, they've included women and they haven't made a big deal out of it. We don't have any speeches about, oh, you're a woman, that's right. It's like, no, they're just part of the team, and that's great.
Yeah.
Right.
And the only thing we see is, they were both forced into service, and they kind of mock the group captain once in a while.
Yeah, they really do. When he gives them orders, they will make it clear that, hey, we're civilians, like by the way they behave.
Fake salute or snap to attention or
the mock salutes. Yes.
Jawohl.
So the Doctor also reveals around this point that the Daleks are following him because the last time he was on Earth at this time period, he left something behind, the hand of Omega.
Now, he mentions that in a very interesting place. It was the science classroom in Coal Hill School. In other words, Ian Chesterton's classroom.
That's right. Yeah. I have to say, when they did this, when they did Coal Hill School with Clara, I think it was the same building, in fact, that they must have used. The same.
I don't know.
It looked very similar, at least.
Probably
by my
updated in 20 years or 30 years since this episode, or 25 years since this episode aired. But
yeah, but the building itself looks
so. Let's talk continuity for a second, because when we first meet the Doctor in an unearthly child, we're led to understand by this episode that he had brought the Hand of Omega here to bury it. And so that's why he had a grave dug for it. That's why he got a blind vicar, so the vicar couldn't see what they were burying. The vicar assumes it's a normal casket and it's not floating on its own accord into the grave. So apparently the first Doctor had this plan to bury the Hand of Omega, but it wasn't with reference to the Daleks, because the Doctor didn't know about the Daleks yet. They didn't go to Skaro until the second story. And so apparently the Daleks have learned subsequently about the hand and have hatched this plan to go back and get it from 1963.
Right.
Also, the Doctor, you could say, well, why hasn't the Doctor come back to bury it before now? And the answer, presumably, I mean, one, you could just say, well, time machine. He can do it anytime he wants, except for the fact that for the early incarnations, he didn't have control of the TARDIS.
No.
And so he wouldn't, when he ended up fleeing with Ian and Barbara on board, when he kidnapped them impulsively, he could not get back to 1963 to finish the burial. And I guess was just hoping that someday he'd manage to get back there and complete his project of burying it. But now that the Daleks have learned about it and are going back to get it, he now has control of the TARDIS. So he goes back and has changed his plan. He is going to bury it, but that's not the end of his plan for it.
It's a very complex plan that he's got going here. Very interesting. So the Doctor and Ace end up searching the basement of the school, and they find a transmat platform, which activates and starts to beam in a Dalek insides first, which is, I think, a very interesting effect. Yeah. I kind of hope it doesn't do that with people. Ugh. But the Doctor dephases it, he says, and ends up basically killing the Dalek right off the bat.
Yes.
Just boom.
Yeah. He's totally ruthless in this.
You can't have two objects of matter on the same point in space at the same time.
Right.
If you try to do that with the car, you get an accident. If you try to do that with the transmat, you end up like putting one half on top of the other, and it just all goes poof.
Yeah. Yeah. Jimmy, you were saying he's pretty ruthless in this episode.
He's very ruthless. He is totally unconcerned about killing Daleks. And as we'll see, his plan is genocide.
Right. Right. Well, of course, the Doctor does make a mistake here. He doesn't realize that there has to be a Dalek operator on this side of the transmat. And so when they find out, they try to run from it. Ace gets through the cellar door, but the headmaster knocks her out and locks the Doctor in. End of the first part of the episode. What will happen to the Doctor?
Oh, and not just the going up the steps. This is the first time on screen we've seen Daleks levitating.
Oh.
Well, we've seen them levitate before, but this is the first time we see them levitate up steps, which was the classic joke about Daleks, that you could just get away from them by running up a staircase. And here we see for reals, no, that doesn't work. They will just levitate up the steps.
It's true.
Now, it had been the ability to levitate and go up steps, stuff like that, had been in comics and books and stuff like that, but never seeing it on screen going up the steps.
Now they have
like
the technology. That was in the one where they were in the lighthouse. There was the creature that went up the steps. Remember that one? Brain not working. Yeah, it was the
Horror of Fang Rock.
The fourth Doctor.
Horror of Fang Rock.
Fang Rock.
Fang Rock. Yeah, going up the steps. All right, so we're at part 2, which starts with Ace waking up from being knocked out, and she tackles the headmaster, which is a nice bit of action there on Ace's part. Lets the Doctor out. They discover that the headmaster has a device behind his ear that's been controlling him. They don't take it off him, though, right?
Nope.
No.
He
just looks at it and walks away.
Poor guy. So I like this bit. The Doctor and Ace go outside and meet a soldier who's been sent there with some anti-tank rockets. And he just makes them sign for them. We're here for the... What's the...
Yeah.
Just sign here.
As you do, I guess. You want a receipt for those tank rockets you're handing over to the civilian.
Well, as long as he's got his signature, I mean, that's all that matters, right?
Right. It's which says the Doctor, apparently.
But this officer, this soldier wants to make sure he gets his pen back.
Yes. Yeah. The Doctor tries to pocket the pen.
And this brings up something that there is just and they eventually talk about it, but there is an amazing amount of deference being shown to the Doctor by the military in this, because they've just met him. But Professor Jones takes a shine to him as an expert and realizes we need to trust this guy. And she, by force of personality, is able to get the rest of the military to go along.
Right. And she figures out pretty early that he's an alien, that he's not.
Yeah. Well,
human.
It's funny, though, because when I was watching this, I was going, why aren't they mentioning Unit? Why aren't they mentioning Unit? Oh, Unit hasn't been established yet.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So they're going to use, they want to use the rocket to destroy the transmat, but they get confronted by this white Dalek. The Daleks are either white on one faction, the Imperial Daleks, or gray or black on the Resistance Daleks. And so the white Dalek attacks them, and Ace ends up having to shoot the anti-tank rocket at the Dalek about 10 feet away, which bad idea. Don't shoot anti-tank rockets at targets 10 feet away.
But she thought it was pretty fun.
Yes. Military shows up just a little too late, of course, and the Doctor demands they evacuate the area because an invasion may be imminent. And the group captain says a decision will have to be made by the morning. Maybe too late by then, but okay. And the Doctor leaves without Ace. He tells her, "I have to go bury the past." I
love the line when Ace shoots the Dalek and blows it up. The Doctor's just amazed. You killed it. You blew him up. He goes, I ain't for the eyepiece. Just like, okay. Just go for the eyepiece. You can blow it up.
And so he sends Ace to spend the night at the boarding house that is run by Sergeant Mike's mother. And so she's taken care of for the evening. And then he, on his way that night, stops at like a restaurant or something, a lunch counter.
A coffee shop,
A coffee shop, and has a conversation with a T-man about... It's a very interesting conversation. It's very philosophical. It's about the effects that will ripple when you make a decision and how you can't always foresee what those ripples are going to be. And the T-man counsels him that he says, life is like that, and the best thing is to just get on with it. And what this is all signifying is the Doctor is mulling over this huge decision he's got to make of, is he really going to go through with his plan, which, as we will see, is to destroy Skaro and commit genocide. And he ends up, and so that's a lot of the uncertainty we see through these early episodes of the Doctor being uncertain. It's because he's not sure if he wants to go through with this plan. And in hindsight, there are big ripples from this. This, together with the events of Genesis of the Daleks, Russell T. Davies indicated, are like the two big things that started the Great Time War.
Interesting. Yeah. It is interesting, by the way, how different they handle the Doctor's internal conflict than they would have in New Who. There would have been a lot more externalizing, a lot more angst, a lot more, the Doctor was strutting about the stage. This is a lot more quieter, a lot more, restrained, as you said, but very interesting.
And by the way, if the T-man looks familiar, because he was played by Joseph Marcel, who was the butler on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that's right.
Those of us who grew up during the 80s, that's where we're going to recognize him from. He's in lots of things. I mean, you look at his IMDb thing, and he's a very, very prolific actor. Yeah. I mean, he's all over the place. But everybody's like, oh yeah, he was the butler on Fresh Prince. Oh.
The Jamaican accent threw me off, because in Fresh Prince he has a British accent, of course.
Yep.
So at the school, back at the school, another Dalek arrives by transmat. So we have some forebodings, some foreshadowing there. The next morning, the Doctor goes to a funeral parlor where he says he's there to collect a casket. It opens at his command, and
white light and mist or something is inside of it, and he talks to it. So it's got a voice interface, like an Alexa. And he has Ace's baseball bat, which he took from her when he sent her to the boarding house, and he presents it to the open casket and says, "Let's see what you can make of this." And it receives the baseball bat and upgrades it, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, that's a big time upgrade. I love the caretaker is great, because after the Doctor does this, he's leaving, and you hear him on the phone. I thought you said the Doctor was an old geezer with white hair.
Yes, that's right. That's what he's expecting. And then he he sees it float by, the casket
And
float by
passes.
him and faints at the sight of it. If I saw a casket floating out, I would be a little disturbed too. As you mentioned, Jimmy, the doctor goes to a cemetery with a blind vicar to bury the casket, with a prepared spot. The vicar comments how quiet the pallbearers are.
Yeah. And he also notices the doctor's voice has changed, and the doctor says several times.
Yeah.
Right. So the headmaster is meanwhile following the Sergeant Mike at the cemetery and attacks him and demands to know the location of the renegade Dalek base. And this is where we've gotten our first confirmation that there are two factions of both humans and Daleks involved here. The sergeant says he works for Ratcliffe and the Association, and the headmaster is killed here. So
because he gets captured and he basically gets suicided.
Yes. Then I'm kind of curious. Why did the doctor need the vicar? Why didn't he just bury the casket? What was the point of the vicar?
I guess
maybe he needed the vicar to sign off on the closure of the event, so that the pallbearers would come in and not the pallbearers, the gravediggers would come in and fill it in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and it's possible too that this is a cemetery that's owned by the particular church.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
This is, of course, here in the United States, we're almost used to just public cemeteries versus a parish cemetery. You don't see, there's some of them still in the United States, but they're nowhere near as common as they are over in England.
That's true. So at the boarding house where Ace has been waiting for the doctor, along with Rachel and Allison, who are also both staying there, the doctor gives Ace back her bat, which, like you said, has been upgraded. It now sparks when you whack it against things, including your palm. He's got a nice upgrade. Mike comes in and claims that Ace is supposed to stay behind, that the Captain Gilmore has told her that she can't come, which is interesting.
Well, and of course, you can tell it's not the case because he's reading the note, and he reads the note, and he looks at Ace and Ace isn't supposed to come with. And when she tries to look, he just wrinkles it up and puts it behind his back. So it was clear that he's not allowing her to go.
And then we have Ratcliffe in his office, and this figure Ratcliffe is working with the Renegades, and this leader of the Renegade faction of some sort is a figure in a sort of Dalek chair with a helmet, which I thought at first, and it's got a Dalek-y voice, I thought at first this was Davros, but it was
and that's
nice
what we're meant to think, that Davros is the leader of the rebel Daleks.
Yes.
Yep.
So Ratcliffe, meanwhile, he admits that he's a Nazi who was imprisoned during the war for speaking out in favor of the Nazis. So a very bad person. We're not going to feel bad when Ratcliffe meets a bad end.
And since the Association are basically neo-Nazis, they are natural allies of the Daleks, who are surrogate Nazis.
Yep. Yes, space Nazis. Back at the military headquarters, the doctor tells them where to look in orbit for the Daleks ship, and says they're to avoid engagement at all costs. Where you stand aside. He basically wants the Daleks to fight it out. We're going to find out. Meanwhile, Ace, back at the boarding house, is looking around. Mike's mom is in the kitchen baking, and she finds a no coloreds sign in the window and is indignant about this, which she should be, rightfully, of course.
But instead of making a big speech about it like we'd get on Modern Who, she just tells the landlady, "I'm going out for a breath of fresh air."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's she also, because she's bored, she turns on the TV
and is immediately uncertain why it doesn't instantly turn on, because back then you had to wait for a TV to warm up, and so she doesn't,
because they had
around.
vacuum tubes instead of modern transistors. It took a long time, but when it does finally warm up, you hear the next show that's coming up on BBC One, Adventure in the new science fiction series Doc.
And cut away.
And that was it.
Yes, this is BBC Television. The time is 5:15, which is when Doctor Who aired, and Saturday viewing continues with An Adventure in the New Science Fiction Series, Doc. Which, thank you for not creating an anachronism.
Sort of.
A paradox. So the Doctor advises the military stand aside and let the Dalek factions destroy themselves. He says, frightening, isn't it, to find there are others better versed in death than human beings? So the one of the Doctor's frequent criticisms of humans as being violent. Ace, meanwhile, has gone back to the school because she'd left her boombox there, and she's going back to get it. And while more Daleks are beaming in on the transmat downstairs, she turns on the radio and intercepts a Dalek transmission, because I guess the Daleks transmit.
Apparently, they broadcast over FM, standard FM radio.
Or AM at that point.
Or AM, yeah.
So or maybe it is FM because that's what she had it set to. Anyway, she discovers them and runs. And the Doctor, meanwhile, has made a new device that will confuse the Daleks and asks the group captain to load up a truck with plastic explosives so we can go. And they just as Ace is being surrounded by the Daleks, and she's trying to fight back with her super bat,
which is great.
She does some real
she's
damage.
Like beating up the Daleks with the improved baseball bat.
Yep. She holds her own
she
for a little bit.
destroys one, yeah, and that's what she's known for, is the companion who destroyed a Dalek with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she up armors herself and picks up a rifle grenade that had been dropped, but gets cornered by 3 of the Daleks and is about to be exterminated. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to mention in this period there are several references to previous Doctor Who things that you said to mention as we go along.
Yes,
the device that the Doctor builds, he says he built something similar on Spiridon, which is a third planet he visited in a third Doctor story called Planet of the Daleks. The Doctor also talks to Ace when she's wondering how could all this be hidden, the fact we had a Dalek invasion in 1963. And he says, do you remember the Loch Ness Monster or the Yeti in the subway? And those were from the fourth Doctor with the Loch Ness Monster and the second Doctor with the Yeti in the subway. So we've had invasions before, and they got covered up.
Yeah, he says humans are really good at self-deception or not seeing what's in front of them.
Yeah.
So this confrontation, the Daleks, cornering Ace, ends the second part, and the third part begins with the Doctor saving the day with his gizmo, while the Daleks are all confused. I do not know what's going on. The Sergeant Mike plants explosives on them and blasts them into
they go boom.
Gooey bits. While they're looking into one of the now destroyed Dalek casings, a claw reaches out and grabs the Doctor by the throat, and Assistant Allison there has to save him, and he notes that they've mutated
using the super
again.
bat again.
Yes. The other destroyed Dalek, the white one, was underdeveloped with vestigial limbs and sensory organs, but the renegade Daleks have functional appendages and a mechanical prosthesis grafted on. So this is the essential difference between the two factions.
Right. And as Ace, the Doctor has Ace later explain, they have mutual xenophobia because, they're fanatical about racial purity, but they're, these blobs. But as Ace puts it, they're not pure in their blobbiness. They hate each other's chromosomes. So war to the death.
Right. The Doctor also, at this point, explains to Ace the dangers of altering the timeline and says even the Daleks with all their power wouldn't dare do such a thing. Which I thought
she was indignant that her boombox got blown up, and Doctor said, could you imagine what that would do to the timeline? The microprocessor revolution or the microchip revolution would come 20 years earlier.
Right. But interesting that the Daleks at this point, at least the Daleks would not mess with the timeline. Not something that they would have any compunction about, say, when Daleks take Manhattan. So interesting difference there.
Well, that's post-Time War. And in the Time War,
yes.
there was lots of rewriting of history.
That's true. So they go back down to the transmat in the basement. The Doctor beats the transmat into bits, breaking
With
the bat in the process. Yeah. I wonder if that was supposed to happen?
I bet it wasn't. I bet.
Mike?
I was going to say, I almost wonder if it wasn't, but...
Yeah.
However, the bat does come back. Recently, Sophie Aldred released a book at Childhood's End, which is her and the 13th Doctor.
Oh, okay.
And it says in there that the Doctor took the bat, later repaired it, and then gave it back to Ace the day she left the Doctor's
as a
travel.
companion. Yeah.
As a companion. And so the bat shows up in this book that just came out recently, a couple of months ago.
Right. In terms of the TV show, though, I think that my sense is that they broke it deliberately so Ace wouldn't have it every single episode in the future.
Right. That's true. Yeah, that would be
kind of like a certain device in modern Who that the Doctor has in every episode and uses about 500 times. Sonic screwdriver.
Yeah.
The magical wand. So Ratcliffe shows up at the cemetery at the grave where the Hand of Omega is buried. It's marked with a Omega tombstone, which, you know,
the Greek symbol
here.
Omega.
Yeah. Yes, right.
Well, and that's the point, is he wants them to dig it up now.
Right. Although it seems a little suspicious that he would mark it so prominently. I'm surprised that they don't figure that out. But anyway, so Ratcliffe, I like this part. Ratcliffe sticks a metal pole into the dirt where above the coffin, and then where he gets zapped when he touches the casket, and it starts emitting energy that the Daleks in orbit, the Imperial Daleks, detect. So they know it's there too now. And then the little schoolgirl shows up, watching Ratcliffe and his men digging up the grave, digging up the casket that's been buried there.
Not realizing yet, spoilers, she's his handler.
Yes,
she's
that's
the
right.
one in the chair.
On the Dalek ship, the Emperor shows up, and I have to say, the Emperor Dalek, it's got this big egg-shaped dome. It reminds me a lot of Mork and Mindy, the giant head, I think they called it. It's sort of comical, I have to say. It was not very at all threatening. It's very comical. It's a big egg-shaped dome on a pepper pot bottom, basically. And the Doctor tells Ace that he intentionally let the renegade Daleks get the Hand of Omega so that the Imperial Daleks will focus on them, not the humans. So the Doctor trying to protect the humans there. Back at the school, the Doctor then explains who Omega was. He was a Gallifreyan who was a stellar engineer, not just a really good one, but like an engineer of stars. And it was Omega who created the supernova that was the initial power source for Gallifreyan time travel experiments, and he left behind him the basis on which Rassilon founded the Time Lord Society, and he left behind the Hand of Omega, which is a remote stellar manipulator. And the Doctor says, we had trouble with the prototype, and then he says, we had trouble with the prototype, and then amends it to say, they had trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he says, like, oh, what trouble we had with the prototype. And she said, and Ace says, we, and he just says, they. So, right. Yeah, this is another hint that he was there at the beginning.
Okay.
Now, Jimmy, wouldn't you agree that this is kind of where the Cartmel master plan is kind of starting to be hinted at very loudly?
Oh, yeah. Very deliberately.
Yeah. Interesting. And how we've talked about that at length when we talked about the season 12. But it's very interesting to see how they were going to start revealing more about the Doctor here, and we just didn't get enough time with the seventh.
And this is the point where it gets kind of interesting again, thinking of season 12 with the Timeless Child and all that plot line, where it's like, okay, maybe not even the Doctor realizes how much he has to do with this. But it was clear that he was involved in this work and knows that he was involved in this work some point in his past.
Yeah. So the Daleks want the Hand of Omega so they can have Time Lord style time travel, and the Doctor wants them to have it, but he didn't count on there being two factions. He says so, and he doesn't explain why he wants them to have it, but he says he wants them to have it.
And this is characteristic of the Seventh Doctor, the master strategist, where he is the only, and the control freak, where he is the only one who knows the big picture. He doles out little bits of information on a need-to-know basis to other people and the audience, but he's the only one who really knows the full plan that he's working on. And
and meanwhile, we go back to the Ratcliffe at his construction yard, and his men are killed by the black and gray Daleks of the Resistance. And when Ratcliffe protests to the helmeted figure, it turns and lifts the helmet, and it's not Davros, it's the little girl, and who activates a time controller just as the Doctor and Ace show up there.
And the time controller is a plasma globe, which is hilarious. It's
not even like a decorated plasma globe. It's just kind of a stock off the shelf one.
So plasma globes, or the principle for them, was invented actually by Nikola Tesla.
Oh, there you go.
And in the 1980s, they became a very popular novelty item where you'd have a glass sphere with this plasma and you would touch it and it would make what looked like little lightning bolts heading out to your hands. But they've just got like an off-the-shelf 1980s novelty toy to be their time controller.
I wanted one of those so bad when I was that age.
Those were fun.
So the doctor says that the Hand of Omega is alive in a manner of speaking, which is interesting. They find that the girl's Dalek chair that she was sitting in, and the doctor is very angry. He's very indignant about it. He says the Daleks' major drawback is their dependency on rationality and logic. Their solution is get a human, preferably young, imaginative, plug the child into the system, and their ingenuity and creativity are slave to the battle computer. I mean, it sounds horrific. It's a sort of a slavery of children.
It also, frankly, sounds un-Dalek-y. I don't think they recognize their limitation in this way and wouldn't want a human to do their thinking for them.
Yeah, the Daleks are so xenophobic. It sounds unusual until the Daleks take Manhattan. I mean, that's sort of the premise of that whole two-parter.
Well, and I wonder if it's as simple as Daleks realize this is an advantage that they can use over the Imperials of using the creativity of humans that they don't have until they don't need her anymore, and then she's gone because icky human.
Right. So the doctor leaves behind his calling card, and the Daleks chase him and Ace back to the Coal Hill School. Mike, meanwhile, Sergeant Mike lets slip that he knows more than he should, and makes Ace suspicious of him.
Although he also arranges a date with her.
Yes. Before that, he arranges a date at the movies. The Daleks attack, but return to base when the Imperial Dalek shuttle comes down and lands in the schoolyard, where it had landed before. The doctor had noticed the landing pattern, the
scorch marks, just like in the pilot, the Peter Capaldi episode, where we have scorch marks on a school playground or school asphalt place.
Yep. Mike now tries to apologize to Ace that he didn't know about the Daleks. Instead, he's just a dirty Nazi racist, but so that doesn't impress Ace very much.
Yeah, incidentally, Ace uses a couple of pieces of British slang that may not be familiar to Americans in this. Earlier on, when he was being a little sexist towards her, she called him a toe rag, and she actually calls him that twice. Toe rags are things that people would put between their toes when they couldn't afford socks or stockings. And so they needless to say, in the work conditions back then, they got really grimy. So you call someone a toe rag, you're saying he's a really disgusting person. Also, she calls him, once he's let it slip that he knows stuff he shouldn't know, and then he tries to say, oh, well, Ace told me, and she knows that's not true. She yells that he's a grass. And to American ears, if grass is slang for marijuana, but that's not what she means. A grass in British slang, at least, can mean a criminal insider who informs on his associates, an informer or spy.
Oh, okay.
Somebody might talk about like a snake in the grass type.
Mm-hmm.
He's or narc.
Yep.
Interesting. So Mike gets arrested by the group captain, who doesn't do a very good job of arresting him.
Well, he arrests him okay, but then he breaks out.
Yeah. Now the Daleks factions have a fight, in the streets of London, and so the Imperials send in a really cool special heavy weapons Dalek. This thing is
basically
a
big
tank
cannon
Dalek
on a Dalek base.
It's nice to see variations in Daleks that are suited to specific tasks.
Yes, and this one, this one shoots and blows up two renegades in one shot. The Doctor, meanwhile, boards the Dalek shuttle by sliding down a rope onto its roof and
Action
disables.
Doctor.
Yes. Of course, what does he use to slide down the rope? The umbrella.
The
question mark umbrella. He disables the Dalek controller on board so the others can get in there too.
I like how the Daleks have a spare plunger stuck in the cabinet.
Yes, for all circumstances.
Just in case.
Doesn't everyone? So the Sergeant Mike breaks out of confinement in the basement and goes back to Ratcliffe's warehouse, where he tells the Daleks he has a message for Ratcliffe. And as the renegades are getting the time controller ready for whatever they're going to use it for. They're attacked by the Imperials, and Ratcliffe takes the controller because he and Mike have determined that the time controller is their bargaining chip. They realize we're as the Lando Calrissian learned on Bespin, I have altered the deal. Pray I don't alter it further. The Daleks have altered the deal, and so this is their bargaining chip against the renegade Daleks. So they take the controller and run.
And they don't realize that the girl has force lightning power.
She ends up shooting the Ratcliffe and killing him, and Mike ends up running off with the time controller. Ace then explains that the renegade and Imperials hate each other because they consider each other impure, this racism analogy we talked about, and they've messed with the Dalek shuttle, and they leave it, and the Dalek shuttle then leaves with the Hand of Omega and the Imperial Dalek patrol that had been sent out, and they go off and they follow Mike, who has the time controller. Meanwhile, the Doctor has rewired the transmat with a TV and a camera of the time, 1963 TV camera. I like that he made Rachel and Allison help out by carrying this huge 1963 TV into the basement.
They thought, hey, we could do like scientific stuff. No, you have to be labor.
That's right. So the Imperials connect the Hand of Omega to their control circuit. They're about to start using it, and the Doctor interrupts them with a transmission. He says, this is what the transmat modification's for. This is the Doctor, President-elect of the High Council of Time Lords, keeper of the legacy of Rassilon, defender of the laws of time, protector of Gallifrey. I call upon you to surrender the Hand of Omega and return to your customary time and place. That's very good.
And he also mentioned earlier that they come from another planet in the distant future. So we have an indication of when the Daleks are from relative to Earth. Mm-hmm. So returning to their time and place. Also, the fact that he is so, positive on Rassilon and I'm keeping his legacy and I'm defending Gallifrey. That suggests, although he does remember being the other at the time of Rassilon, he doesn't remember being the timeless child.
Right. So as the Doctor is giving his ultimatum to the Daleks, the Emperor's dome slides up, and this is when we finally see that Davros is inside. Davros is the Dalek Emperor here, which is interesting given that in New Who that the Davros becomes a prisoner of the Dalek Emperor, which is a different circumstance there. So kind of interesting how things change for him. Davros starts monologuing, and the Doctor mocks him.
The Doctor monologues back.
Well, this is where we get the
rice pudding, etc., etc.
Yes, that's the unlimited rice pudding you hear in our intro for our show. It comes right from this moment. I like the mockery.
So the Daleks' plan with the Hand of Omega is to transform Skaro's son into an equivalent of the Eye of Harmony, so that they'll have similar power to the Time Lords, and then they will destroy Gallifrey. So they're actively plotting the Time War at this point.
Right. Yeah, and they have time travel, the Doctor explains, but the time travel, that technology they have is like really bad, dirty time travel.
Crude and nasty is the way he puts it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Doctor in the rice pudding speech is begging Davros not to use the hand, when in fact that's exactly what he wants Davros to do. And Sylvester McCoy's performance is a little transparent there. It sounds to me, when he's saying, Davros, please don't use the hand, it sounds fake. If Davros had emotional intelligence, he would be able to perceive the deception.
Yes.
It's kind of like someone said, oh, wait. Don't do it.
Yeah, right.
Willy Wonka, that's who I was thinking of. Gene Wilder, kind of, the way he does it. Oh, stop.
Please stop.
Big,
don't.
Please stop. Don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. The Doctor has no compunction. There's no apparent moral compunction about the fact that he's trying to commit genocide. He's going to destroy all the Daleks.
Well, we've had that before. It was just really subtle, and it was stretched out over a number of different scenes across these episodes, like the scene with the T-Man, where he was ruminating about it ahead of time. But now that he's committed, he's just doing it.
Yeah.
Well, it is a contrast, though. You mentioned Genesis of the Daleks earlier, though, of the Fourth Doctor, where he's got the ability to basically commit genocide on the Daleks. and he says, "Do I have the right? Do I have the right to kill all of them?" You know,
apparently he has changed his mind. Yes,
exactly. Yeah. Hey, I got a second chance at this. Let's do it.
Yes.
So, of course, Davros does use the Hand of Omega, and Skaro ends up being vaporized, and Davros says, you've tricked me. And the Doctor says, no, Davros, you tricked yourself. And Davros says, have pity on me. And the Doctor says, I have pity for you.
Yep.
Yes. And the mothership is about to be destroyed.
But Davros runs, so he gets away.
Yes, of course. So meanwhile, Ace is being held at gunpoint by Mike back at the boarding house. But the little girl shows up because he brought the time controller with him, and she ends up killing him. So Mike suffers the just retribution for his sins. And but when the mothership is destroyed, the little girl is released from the control of the Daleks.
There's actually
when the final Dalek is destroyed.
Oh, right.
She's released.
So the Doctor talks the final Dalek into despair, because now he's like, you have no function, all the other Daleks are gone, Skaro's destroyed, and so the Dalek freaks out and basically commits suicide, and as it does that, the little girl is freed.
That's right, because she was controlled by the Renegades, not by the Imperials. And then the Doctor, standing over the remains of the Renegade, the head of the Renegade Daleks, basically says, ashes to ashes, dust to dust over the remains, which is from the Christian funeral. And the Doctor and Ace, speaking of funerals, they are at Mike's funeral, which is interestingly attended by the group captain and Rachel and Allison and everybody. So he's not anathema, which is interesting. But they don't go into the
because he got force lightning by the little girl.
Yes.
And I had in my notes earlier on, Ace was interested in him, but then he betrayed her, so now he has to die.
Right.
There you go.
She says, Doctor, we did good, didn't we? And he says, perhaps. Time will tell. It always does. So it's a bit of a open-ended ending to this. A little like, we'll see how it all, whether what we did actually bears actual fruit.
Yep.
Now, of course, Skaro isn't destroyed, right?
Well, it is. It is. They eventually put it back together, but it is destroyed.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought I had seen somewhere where there was maybe secondary media where they said something about, oh no, it was a different star system that Davros tricked the Doctor or something like that, but maybe not. But it's always
it's kind of like Gallifrey in New Who. It's destroyed. Oh wait, no, it isn't. It's just in time lock. Oh, it's back. Oh, it's destroyed, and that's where we hold now. Yeah.
Yes, you just you never know. It's like Schrodinger's planet. So that's it for that episode. Any final notes on this, Father Cory?
A couple of things in Ian Chesterton's classroom there. Ace picks up a book, on the French Revolution, and that's the book that Barbara gave to Susan.
Oh,
so yeah, that's in an unearthly child. You see that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
When they show the inside of the transmat, I have always wondered what those circuit boards are, because they have these just nondescript circuit boards with all kinds of like memory chips and stuff on. I've always wondered what they are, if they're like an old computer that they ripped apart, or if there's something else there. While the Army and the Rachel and Allison are sitting in the coffee shop, they mention Bernard at the British Rocket Group.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
And it's Bernard Quatermass, who was a earlier sci-fi figure as movies and TV show on BBC. And he comes up in New Who because Malcolm Taylor in the Planet of the Big Red Bus on the
Planet of the Dead,
the sand on the plains of sand, named a unit of measurement Bernard after him.
Oh,
so he shows up in New. So that's when they talked about how you had a Bernard was the output of this wormhole. Well, it's for this Bernard Quatermass.
I love this reference here, though, more because it establishes that Bernard Quatermass and the British Rocket Group are in canon universe in Doctor Who.
Yeah, and he's actively working at that moment at the British Rocket Group. And then finally, Rachel, she was played by Pamela Salem. She was Miss Moneypenny in the Bond movie Never Say Never Again. She was in the Robots of Death as Toos, I think the pilot, if I remember right. And one of the voices of Zowanin in The Face of Evil, the first episode with Leela. These are all both fourth Doctor episodes.
Pamela Salem and No. Oh, okay. Interesting. That's right. I see a picture of her. Yeah, she looks familiar now. Jimmy, anything you have?
Yeah, so this episode does not depict Seven at his most ruthless, but close. He actually can be more ruthless than this.
Yes.
There's a line in there where if you're wondering about what happened to the hand, the doctor says it's returning to Gallifrey. So that doesn't explain why he took it from Gallifrey, but we are given verbal closure on that. Specifically, the science lab they're in is a chemistry lab. And on Unearthly Child, Ian and Barbara went to discuss Susan in a chemistry lab. So it's presumably the same one.
Dom, question for you. What do you think of Ace in this one?
Ace was good. I mean, so this is the second Ace thing I've seen. We saw the Dragonfire one, which was introduced.
Of course, this is only her second serial.
Yeah,
so
I like Ace. I like her. I like her style. I like her wanting to blow things up. I think she's a lot of fun. And I like that she's young. She's got some energy. She's not a stereotypical, femme fatale or not femme fatale. Girl in distress, like Perry was very often. She's not screechy like Mel kind of was. I kind of like her.
She's even protective of the doctor when they first go down into the basement and they're having a kind of conversation about this is going to be dangerous. She gets in front of him with the unupgraded baseball bat to protect him and goes down first.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I like Ace in this. I think
she still has some vulnerability that she kind of hides behind the tough exterior.
Yeah. I think she's I can see why people really like her and why it is a shame that we didn't get more Ace, Seventh Doctor before the cancellation.
Yep.
All right, so I think that will do it for this episode. Before we tie things up, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons.
Actually, we had a little bit of feedback on a recent episode. Someone pointed out that we had said, and specifically that I had said a couple of times, that it looked like the Master and the Time Masters, or Cyber Lords, or whatever you want to call them, that they should be dead, but that I hope they would bring them back. And actually on Facebook, someone pointed out that when they're about to use the death particle in the Timeless Children, the Master says, "All of you through there now."
Yep.
And I hadn't caught that because we don't see him say that. He says it off camera as the camera is showing us the button being pushed for the death particle. And I was so focused on the visual, I didn't notice the line. But we do have a line in there explaining how they survive.
And I think we kind of briefly talked about it, about how he might have had his TARDIS or a TARDIS sitting there right next to him, And so you can imagine that at least at a minimum, the Master, if not some of the upgraded Cybermen Time Lords, were able to jump into there before all went boom.
Yeah, so thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, that was an email from Tim Davies. So thank you, Tim. So as I was going to say, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Doctor Who, including Joshua P., Ricard G., Jim K., Tristram C., and Nate and Jessica V. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits our show every week. And so that's it from us. What do you think of Remembrance of the Daleks, this Seventh Doctor story? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send us an email to doctorwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 10th Doctor story, The Waters of Mars. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, you can always judge a man by the quality of his enemies.
Right. This is going to be fun.